keep messing with it. Just goes whatever it wants to do.
My grandma's TV, where you're just banging it and messing with it, fixes.
You tell him go by the street.
Thing is in the back. And then it's way off.
I mentioned it before. Nothing got done, so I did it again.
Just about a minute.
If I have as much luck as that,
Mr.
I do.
Hilberg.
Too early for trailer house on Pierceville Avenue. I'll be out of here before it's done. But I'm sure it'll get done
Appreciate the count.
quicker than normal.
I don't know. Already sent out an email. Beginning underway in about 10, 9. There we go. 6, 5. Good evening and welcome to the Defiance City Council meeting for this evening, August 2nd, 2022. This evening we have Pastor Mick Sobiak from Faith Baptist here to open us up in prayer. Thanks for being our guest this evening, Pastor Sobiak.
Thank you. If you join me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and glorious day. And Father, I thank you for these men and women that so faithfully serve and have served for so many years in administering the city and its many facilities and infrastructure. We ask that you would give them wisdom, grant them your wisdom, Lord, to continue to serve and make decisions that would benefit our city economically and spiritually, Father. Also, Father, this evening we come before you and we mourn the passing of our city historian, Randall Buckman. Pray, Father, that you would be with his family, bring them comfort, and the Defiance College community and the city community as this great man in our city has come to be with you. And so we thank you for his service these many years also. And so we commit the work of the council this evening and the administration to you, Lord, and we ask your blessings upon it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Would you let the record show that all the members of council are present except for Mr. Mast. He had sent out an email that he wouldn't be able to make it this evening. Do we have a motion to excuse him this evening? So moved. Mr. Engel, second. Mr. Waxler. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Mast this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Well, you should stay home, get some rest. Would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, as we get started, we have a special guest I always look forward to coming. We have Erica Willitzer, the CIC Executive Director, with her monthly update. Thanks for being our guest this evening.
Well, thanks for having me. Well, I'm gonna give you an update. There are several projects that we're working with that we can't talk about at this point in time that we hope that eventually we will be able to bring to you. But I'm going to talk about what I can talk about. One thing that's kind of, I think, flown under the radar that we really haven't discussed a whole lot. I know that the Crescent News has covered it really well, but we have the spec building on Elliott Road. We've been marketing it a lot. The broker has been marketing that a lot, and we have some really good leads there. But I also wanted to let you know that we have several developers that have been coming to, calling our office, setting up meetings, also looking for the potential of us also doing some spec buildings here in Defiance. So I guess the market is hot, and we're entertaining a lot of those calls, along with interest in housing development, more housing development. I've been referring all those to the mayor, and then also continuing to reach out to other housing developers I think might have some interest there, so we think that's good. A couple updates on some of the projects that you guys are aware about. So the building that's out on 1469 Quality Drive, which is it's called Castle Hill Materials. It's a company that came from Indiana to Defiance. They are employing 30 new employees. And what they do there is called wet casting, and they make faux stone for buildings and houses. We are in the process of assisting them in hiring. They have some hired, but they're also looking for hiring some other individuals. And we assisted them along with Maumee Valley Planning and getting them a community development block grant loan. And part of the requirement of that loan is to hire a percentage of low to moderate income individuals, which would then hopefully push them to the middle class level. And they are looking to work with different individuals, even people that might have really fallen on some hard times, went to prison, but are wanting to be rehabilitated and get into a new position that will empower them to want to get into that middle class level. They're really willing to work with individuals that want to get to a better place. So I wanted to let all of you know that because grassroots efforts, word, if you are out on the street and hear somebody that might need an opportunity, I think this would be a great opportunity. The other thing too, TKI, which is Tacender Low Curly, which is the fertilizer plant over in Enterprise Industrial Park. The groundbreaking for that has been set. It's going to be August 31st at 10 o'clock. Invites, I think, were just finalized either yesterday or today. So I believe the media was sent out the invites yesterday, and then now all the local invites are going to be going out to that. So you guys will all be invited. It should be a very special groundbreaking that I've really never, been a part of one quite like this, where they're going to commemorate Larry Plummer and Ray Plummer, who developed that park. And then the 1918 building, the city, along with our office, we're constantly trying to work on that. I wanted to give you guys a heads up that we've had just that things have picked up there too. 2 developers in the last 2 weeks have reached out with wanting more information about that building. So I think that's a really good sign. Another thing that we're constantly doing in our office is really trying to diversify our inventory. So we have in Defiance some great inventory. We've got, an Enterprise Industrial Park. We have the Harmon Business Park. We have Elliott Road where Brian Keller is developing. But we also need to keep on diversifying. So CSX owns some property right across from General Motors. It's roughly 71 acres, and they have given our office permission to develop that or promote that into an industrial site, which would have direct access to the main line for CSX. It's right across from General Motors, so it obviously has fantastic utilities as far as electricity goes. So we're excited about that. I notified the state, it's on the state's website. So they're very excited about that new potential to start marketing that site. As far as our office goes, we have some team changes that I wanted to make you guys aware of. Courtney Williams, who was our workforce and marketing manager, did a fantastic job for us. She took another opportunity, and I honestly cannot blame her. It was a great opportunity that I told her, you can't refuse something like that. So I'm very happy for her. I was sad though to see her go, but with that, and I couldn't believe this. We didn't even post the job and received 15 great candidates in our office. Most of that had to do with the Crescent News, writing the story about Courtney leaving, and then Courtney saying that she was leaving for another opportunity on her social media platforms and us saying goodbye to her. But we didn't even have to post it. We're moving Hannah Waterman to the workforce and marketing position. She's a Defiance College grad. She was our office manager. I'm looking forward to bringing her to introduce you. She's on vacation this week. And then we have somebody hired that will be starting August 8th. And instead of, we're changing the positions a little bit. There was a little bit of a gap that we started noticing only because Hannah started to fill it. Hannah started really doing a lot of, she would do the operation of the organization, but then she was really doing a lot of engagement with the different businesses. Her heart was more on the workforce and the marketing side, but this new person is really gonna take the business engagement with our local existing companies to the next level. And so what do I mean by that? One, it's making sure that the local businesses are aware of the resources that our office, our partners have, and making sure that they could leverage them whenever they possibly can. It's assisting them with maybe needs that are not project or expansion related, because the project expansions, that's typically my responsibility in our office. But it's also this too. It's really trying to create creative content that's engaging, not just with the business community, but with our actual community. I recently started telling people this because I think it's amazing. So Balchem, which is located, right as you're entering into downtown, we did a tour. We took a tour with the manufacturing camp kids there. And I don't know if a lot of people even realize this, but they make all the Swiss Miss cocoa in the United States. Even the cocoa that's the Meyer or the Kroger brand. That's really cool for Defiance, Ohio. They also make, my daughter corrected me, I was calling it the sweet powder around the Sour Patch Kids. No, Mom, it's the sour, it's not sweet, it's the sour like salt that's around the Sour Patch Kids. But anyways, they actually make that coating that it goes around Sour Patch Kids. And they make a lot of the components in Little Debbie's, like the blueberries or the confetti that goes into those muffins that they make. That's all made right here in Defiance, Ohio. So we're really gonna try to step up our game with the creative content. And that means doing TikTok, even though I'm not a TikTok person, but we started to do some TikTok stuff. And I had this developer reach out to me and said, first of all, they called me 1 week after we started posting some TikToks. Hannah Waterman went downtown and was doing some TikTok videos of some of our downtown businesses, some of our manufacturers, and the developer's like, I can't believe you guys are doing TikTok. Probably what John would say, right? And so I'm like, yeah, we're trying to like be trendy, I guess. But anyways, then a week later, she called me back and she's like, you guys, that's what people on the West Coast are doing in economic development. And it's like, yeah, we're trying to get the word out about Defiance County. There's a lot of engineering, infrastructure, all that kind of stuff that goes with economic development. But I think that we're all finding it is way more than that. It is about telling your story. And the only one that's going to tell the story is ourselves. And so we're wanting to try to get that message out and continually do that. I mean, we met with a developer, was that last week or the week before? Probably the week before. And he mentioned Anthony Wayne. And he thought that was the coolest thing. And he started knowing the history about Defiance. And so there's it's a lot more than just the actual nuts and bolts of economic development. There's the soft stuff that comes along with it. And we want to make sure that we're taking more of an all-above approach when it comes to economic development, making sure that we tell our story. So those were like the updates that I wanted to tell you. And I guess just to kind of also tie into that, like companies like to be near other companies. So like if you have food companies and they know that they're here in Defiance, and you start telling that story, they're, oh, I saw, we had actually one other, ag-oriented business found out that we had a Balchem and they mentioned that. So it's a ripple effect that we're trying to go after here. And then, just like I had said at the beginning, there are several different projects that we're working on, some that I'm extremely excited about, getting to a point, hopefully, that we can announce if all goes well. But that's all I have for tonight. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Mr. Esty?
I have a comment. I think the last part where you were talking about the TikTok and
Yes, it's crazy. Are you gonna say I'm crazy, Joe?
it all goes to the brand.
Yes.
And that's the thing that people will remember. And like what you said, word of mouth being spread, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And I think it's great.
Years ago, I was asked to be on this, it was a statewide communication committee when I worked in the utility industry. And I always said, we need to make sure we're sprinkling in the fun, the good. Because then when times get really hard, you've got that great following, and people are gonna be a little bit more understanding and know what you're about.
Good job.
Okay, thanks, guys.
No, thanks for being our guest. I reviewed the index minutes for the special meeting that was held on July 19th and the city council meeting last time we met on July 26th. Do we have a motion to correct or amend these index minutes as they're presented? Without any motion, I'll approve the same. Do we have any liaison meeting requests or reports? Okay. Do we have any comments from council? Mr. Engel?
Yes, I kind of read in the Crescent News about SK Wayne, about maybe crushing their cement on site instead of taking it away. I'm a little concerned about that as far as what kind of noise it's gonna have, the dust it's gonna create. Is there anything that we can do about that? I don't know if it's Mayor McCann or Ryan Mack can answer that.
Mr. Mack and I discussed that earlier this evening, as we'd read the article as well, Mr. Engel, and thanks for the question. I've already emailed the county commissioners as well as Warren Schlatter, our county engineer, and asked that they seriously consider, if possible, and they are gonna move that out to the landfill, that they consider doing that crushing at the landfill for the noise and dust reasons. So, the commissioners have always worked well with us, so I would expect that they'll
Okay, thanks.
make something work. Thanks for the question.
Thanks.
Any other comments from council this evening? There's nothing on my desk right at the moment. Mayor McCann?
Thank you. Kind of some really good news here. A few days back, Kelsey Heck, who's a lab analyst at our wastewater plant, received some pretty high recognition at the One Water Conference in Cleveland. The award recognizes a lab analyst who has demonstrated excellence and professionalism in his or her daily lab work. And so she received that recognition, and we'll at some point stop out and see Kelsey, and she'll be embarrassed to death, but nonetheless, she's well deserving of that recognition. Good job, Kelsey. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Mack?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. To start off with, we had talked about a tour of the GAC system. At this point, I would recommend a special meeting to take place on August 23rd, 5:30 p.m., whichever council would like, at the city water treatment plant to get a full tour of the new facility. So that's my first.
All right. And,
We need a definite time before we make a motion.
right. Because we just set it up for discussion so that we could bring a motion this evening. Is there any recommendations as far as 5 or 5:30?
5:30.
5:30? That way people, they get off at
We're not
5.
having console, it don't matter anyway, right?
Right.
But we will, it's the fourth Tuesday.
Oh, at least
The 23rd.
At least that's
Yeah, the
special meeting.
23rd would be right before council.
Okay.
Right, we'll be meeting. So, do you wanna meet there or here in order to head out
If you're
there?
going, if you're gonna have council, it's that night, better meet there, otherwise.
Meet
By the
there,
time you're bringing everybody at 5:30, get out there, you're gonna be there at 6, you aren't gonna have it.
That's a good point.
meet there at 5:30.
Meet there at 5:30. So do we have a motion for a special meeting on August 23rd, meeting at 5:30 at the water treatment plant?
I'll make the motion.
Make a motion, Mr. Resty.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
August 23rd, 5:30, water treatment plant. We'll be there.
Mr. President, that is also a public meeting, obviously, so Mr. Helberg can be there too.
Yeah, definitely.
And then secondly, I made council aware last week that we may be closing down the boardwalk this week for some maintenance. Due to some issues obtaining some materials, it's gonna be pushed back a couple weeks. I don't have a definitive time on it, but I can make you aware of it when it happens. So I just wanted to let you know it won't be closed this week for the scheduled maintenance yet.
Supply chain issues, imagine that.
Yeah, it comes up.
Oh, well, thank you.
And that's all, Mr. President.
Mr. O'Donnell,
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Leonard.
I have nothing myself, but I would like to yield my time, so to speak, to our tax commissioner, Lori Flory, who is here to tell you a little bit about some new technology that is coming out of the utility billing office.
Oh, thanks for being our guest.
Hi. So a few years ago, we had done a major meter overhaul. It's a little more advanced. Meters are guaranteed or supposedly guaranteed to last for quite a few years, longer than what the old ones were. With this program, they have an app that you can put on your phone. You can log in on your computer, on your laptop, on whatever, and it kind of puts the responsibility back on the homeowner a little bit more. You can track your usage. You can track daily, hourly, monthly. You just have to create an account. If you don't have your account number, you can call into the UBO office and whoever answers can help you. If you try to set it up and you have issues with it, certainly call in. Friday, seems like that's all I did was help everyone set up their accounts. So it gives great information. It gives you the same information that we're looking at on our billing software. We have maybe 50 people on it so far. We've put out alerts on the app. We've put out something on Facebook, and then we also have inserts going into each of the 4 cycles in the month of August, just to try to get the word out so people sign up for it. So
Okay, and the name of the app?
it's called My Water Advisor 2.
Numeral 2, Lori.
No, number 2, yeah. Number
My
2.
Water Advisor 2, it's probably through the
Google Play.
Google Play
Right.
and
Mhm.
you have to play
Right.
whatever the
Right.
iPhone one is, and
Yes, yeah.
If a house has an issue with, maybe like running water or something like that, would this app be able to recognize that?
Absolutely. So what you would do is you would go in and you can set it, if I'm gonna use more than 25 cubic feet of water a day, I want it to tell me. If you're going on vacation, it has like a vacation setting. So you can say I'm going on vacation August 3rd through August 10th. If I use more than 5 cubic feet a day, I want it to text me or I want it to email me.
Good.
So,
I had an issue with our household, and we did receive a courtesy call from the
it's me.
office. And we did find the issue and correct it, and it saved us money. So I think this is great, and we can always use extra money. So, anything we can do to save something, if we can recognize something ahead of time, I think that's great. This is a good
It's a good
for the
tool to
community.
use, yes,
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely.
the technology of the new meters we put in have enabled our office to see this information now for a couple of years, but to be able to put it out for the customer to see the same and set those alerts and those kind of things.
That's great.
Pretty neat.
Good.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks for the good news.
Thanks, Lori.
With that, we do have 5 items of legislation for discussion this evening. Ms. Elders, would you read the caption for the first?
First reading by caption only, an ordinance awarding a contract for design, implementation, and hosting of a new city website and declare an emergency.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Our current city website is several years old. Actually, its last major overhaul was 2016. And that's kind of like the dark ages for internet sites compared to as we know them today. Both that site and the administrator to the site, Ms. Dale, have served us well. However, we're getting to the point where the recommended upgrades and features are no longer supported by the provider. So we have to make a decision about switching to something else. And that was also at the recommendation of Ms. Yvonne Dale. And we're looking for a website that can convey information to your constituents and get them the information that they need to know. And we would submit that those demands, based on what these sites can do, have increased exponentially. So the city administration recommends a migration to a full-service platform. And so we received proposals from various firms that are versed in, well-regarded in municipal website management, and found one to be particularly desirable, and that's Civic Plus out of Manhattan, Kansas. And I believe they are the largest, if not, they're the largest website, municipal website manager in the industry. They provided a proposal for setting up and hosting our website, and that would include assisting with public engagement at the cost of $34,293 for the first year, and then $9,817.50 for the second year. And so your approval would enable the city administrator, Mr. Mack, to enter into both a master service agreement and the statement of work on behalf of the city and have a user-friendly, up-to-date website for your constituents.
Thank you. Mr. Waxler?
What's the cost on this compared to what we pay now?
I don't know, I'd probably defer to John.
Yeah, so the first year, the 34,000 the first year obviously is, rebuilding the whole website, and there's a lot of labor intensive effort. The 9,000, the 9,800, which is part of the 34,000 in the first year, and then 9,800 in the second year. So what we've been paying Yvonne Dale in the area of $2,500 to $3,000 a year. We've also been paying between $5,000 and $10,000 a year for either Nixle or what we now have as GoGov. And this website and the communication that's built into the website will eliminate the need for either the Nixle or the GoGov. GoGov, in fact, is about a $10,000 a year product that we are currently using. So that will go away. So in effect, we'll be spending roughly the same $10,000 we have been spending, and we'll get a whole new website and all of those communication tools and improved communication tools that we've been trying to build through Nixle and now GoGov. So after the first year, Steve, it'll be basically a net break even with what we're currently paying for the communication tool.
But we have no money put back in the budget for this. We haven't talked about this as far as budget wise.
No, we have not.
So you're gonna take 34,000, where's that money coming from?
The 34,000 will come, there's a line item in the city administrator's budget, and quite honestly, we'll be coming with a supplemental appropriation to cover that.
So why is this an emergency if we knew it was that bad? Why don't we talk about this kind of stuff before we bring it to us as an emergency?
Mrs. Dale just asked us about 3 months ago to find someone else.
But we've never heard about it until now, and it's an emergency.
Not sure I understand your point, I'm sorry.
We was never told that we needed to upgrade our system. We've never talked about it in the past. And now it's an emergency to pass this.
So we'd like to get started on it. Mrs. Dale doesn't want to do it anymore.
I understand that, but you know how much money we spent this year outside of, off a budget that we haven't had budgeted? And we just keep going and going. I don't know why we waste time doing a budget if we're just gonna keep doing stuff like this.
Okay,
I mean,
if we can somehow predict that a individual we're working with on our website mid-year is going to ask us to find somebody else, so be it, but I don't know how that happens, Mr. Waxler.
well, you know, we spent a lot of money this year out of budget. I mean, we just spent a lot of money.
We have, we
That
know
wasn't
push-
even budgeted.
Each instance has been something we just could not have predicted.
Right, and then
could
we
not
just had
have
to order some
anticipated.
valves last week, now there's more we just keep going, and I understand that kind of stuff. You gotta have the stuff in inventory, I totally understand that. She won't run this system until the end of the year, so we can budget for it? So when did she end it, today, tomorrow, I mean,
As soon as we can get started with someone else, she wants to be done.
I just
I
think,
think we should assure, because there are gonna be she has other customers. We should assure those customers that she's told us she plans on to continue working with some of her other customers, but that the cities has just gotten to be too much. We do a lot with our website to keep people informed, to keep people updated on projects. I don't know how much time you spend on our website, but there's a lot there. And working with Civic Plus, we've spent hours with them on WebEx meetings, listening to their staff for the various different facets of this website, and it's impressive. And that's all this company does, is municipal government websites. So we're quite excited about them, and the community engagement piece of it is very appealing. The people that internally that were part of this decision-making progress, Nikki Warnicki, our planner, Linda Sproul, our engineer, Debbie Stevens, our assistant, plus the Board of Control, quite enthusiastic about.
well, I understand all that, but you guys have been talking about it obviously for a couple of months. We don't hear nothing about it until it comes to us as an emergency ordinance. I don't think that's right, it's money that wasn't budgeted, and I think we should have been aware
Look at
of
Board
it.
of Control minutes, but I have to believe it's mentioned in Board of Control minutes. I could be mistaken, but we do provide you with those minutes, and we do, I guess, assume, we shouldn't assume, but we assume that you read those minutes.
You know, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, I mean, I don't sit around and
But
read.
sometimes you didn't, was probably when it was mentioned that.
I just think we're spending a lot of money this year out of budget, and I don't know where it's gonna stop. It's gotta stop pretty soon, or we're just gonna, no sense wasting our time doing a budget. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Waxler. Mrs. Crutch?
Was there anybody else that you checked into as
We
far
listened.
as doing the website?
2 other proposals.
And this was the lowest, or this was the best, or this was?
This is by far the best. There was another outside firm that was similarly attractive, but there was a couple things that it didn't include, and I'll have to say that dealing with their staff and dealing with Civic Plus's staff, there was no comparison. Civic Plus's staff certainly seems well-trained and well-prepared to handle what we do. And they do a lot of municipalities much bigger than us. They do smaller communities like us, but they also do some very large.
How much does Yvonne usually do, weekly or monthly? How many hours does she usually put in?
It depends. She bills by the hour, John?
Yeah.
And there are weeks where we keep her pretty busy. She comes in here, she meets with Melinda, she meets with Nikki. Other division heads send her things as well. It depends on when the division heads get information out to her.
We put a lot of time into the budget, you all put a lot of time into the budget, and, at the end of the day, the budget's just a plan. Plans change, and especially in the face of these unanticipated events, payroll issues we've had come up before, and now this, you know, if the question of the money and the unanticipated expense, that's kind of what I would defend in this case. If it's a question of the council not being made aware of it or not being aware of it until tonight, that's, you know, we can improve on that, but the money, number one, we will have the money and we will, you know, there's other areas of the budget where we're not gonna spend everything we budgeted, so some of it's a reallocation and, but things do change, and this has been a year full of change we could not have
Sure has,
predicted.
a lot of it, a lot of money.
And a lot of these purchases where we get quotes, the quotes have an expiration date, like this one's net 30, and we just don't have the time to do the emergency from when we get the quote until council passage plus 30 days. We wouldn't have that kind of time to do a regular order, or the prices are apt to increase even further in this climate.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Leonard? Mr. O'Donnell? Mr. Engel?
Motion to suspend the call.
Motion to suspend the call, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. And Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett. Do we have a second? Mr. Rusty?
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
This ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance awarding a contract for pavement markings throughout the city and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The ordinance you have before you addresses the city's annual pavement marking. Council has budgeted for this. The bid is being awarded to Griffin Pavement Striping LLC at a cost of $55,642. We ask this be passed in an emergency, again, to go off of what my colleague mentioned, pricing. We want to secure the pricing that's going up rapidly from month to month. So we would like to secure the pricing, which is why we asked for an emergency on this.
Mr. Rusty?
No other questions, motion to suspend and call.
We have no other questions. Motion to suspend and call, Mr. Rusty.
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Do we have a second, Mr. Hancock?
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
This ordinance is also adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of 2 valve insertions for the Maumee River waterline crossing and declaring emergency.
Mr. Mack?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The next ordinance in front of this body is similar to the one from last week. Our Water Distribution Division is attempting to secure key critical parts for the upcoming water line project across the Maumee River. The division solicited a quote from Hydrostop. This firm submitted a quote for 2 valve insertions and cartridges at a price of $42,216. And again, we ask for an emergency in order to secure the pricing of these parts.
Any questions in these regards for Mr. Mack? Mr. Rusty?
Motion to suspend and call.
We have a motion to suspend and call, Mr. Rusty. Second, Mr. Corbett.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Crutch.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
And Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
This ordinance is also adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance amending ordinance number 8360 passed December 7th, 2021 to make appropriation for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Defiance, Ohio during the period of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, thank you. supplemental appropriation. And I will take a few minutes to go over each one of these items. The first one is kind of the oddball of the group. $30,000 supplemental for economic development. That would be to accommodate a completion of our annual payment to the CIC. For a number of years, the city's contribution to the CIC has been $80,000. In the current budget, we budgeted $50,000 because there was some land that the city owned back behind the Purple Dog on Baltimore. We provided that land to the CIC. They sold it to the Purple Dog folks so that they could expand their facility. And the CIC was to keep the proceeds of that sale, which was about the $30,000. When the closing on the property went down, the money ended up coming to the city, not the CIC. So we got the $30,000. So we need to bump the appropriation and get the CIC the money that they were relying on from that land sale. Really, it'd be a wash from what we normally budget and kind of a wash from what we had anticipated. $18,000 to the civil service division. We usually budget $10,000 a year for the sake of officer testing in the police and fire departments. Some years we don't spend it at all. Some years that covers the one test that we need. In 2022, we've already had 3 tests. And again, they run $8,000-9,000 a piece. So we're gonna need this $18,000 to cover the cost of that testing. That's how we build the lists from which we draft future employees, particularly in police and fire. In the police and fire fund, we've got a supplemental for $10,350. That reflects a Marks Radio grant that the fire department received, and we're able to utilize, and we want to appropriate those dollars so they're not shortchanged on their regular radio type activity in that line item. And then finally, and this is kind of a routine thing, in the fire damage repair and removal fund, as you all know, when we have residential fires in the city, the state code requires that the insurance companies for those properties provide the city with a percentage of the coverage to ensure that the property either gets repaired or demolished. And once those steps have been taken, we release that money back to the homeowner. So this $69,000 represents insurance proceeds we have received and in turn need to pay out to those property owners. It's really just a kind of a trust account, but we do have to appropriate it. And we don't appropriate it until we know we're going to need it. You know, you have years we don't have any fires at all. And that would be it for now, unless you have any other questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Leonard? With no questions, motion to suspend and call Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes.
And the motion to adopt, Mr. Corbett.
Second.
Second, Mr. Engel.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch? Yes. Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Right. This ordinance is adopted.
First reading by caption only, an ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds for the city of Defiance, Ohio for a year ending December 31st, 2022.
And Mr. Leonard.
Yes, thanks again. So again, as council knows, at the beginning of the year, we passed an ordinance authorizing us to do monthly transfers. There are a number of transfers that are built into the budget, transfers between funds to fund the operations and other funds, as we've been over many times. And again, in January, we passed that ordinance that covers the first 9 months of the year. Then in October, November, and December, we pass individual transfer ordinances in case something changes, as things are apt to do. And so, but We also have a series of one-time transfers that were built into the budget that I normally wait till late in the year to do, and I thought might make more sense to do those in the middle of the year. So the 4 items on this ordinance are all included in the budget, and we're just simply accelerating the time frame in which I'm asking the council to authorize them. The first and fourth item reference the splash pad trust fund. Those are we have debt service payments in the splash pad. I believe that next year would be the last year we have those payments. And those are funded out of both the general fund and the hotel motel tax fund. And then we are making debt service payments on the property on Commerce Drive. And that is a transfer from the general fund to the Commerce Drive fund to cover that debt. As you all know, the buildings that are going up, or the development that's going up right now in Harmon Park will trigger the TIF in that area that will begin to repay us the cost of this debt, and we'll recover these dollars over time. And then the fourth item is a planned transfer that we had from the Water Pollution Control Fund to the Sewer Capital Improvements Fund, $250,000 to help support the cost of the CSO program. In this case, it'd be primarily the engineering services from John Lyons and Strand, who reported to us a few weeks ago. But it's not uncommon for us to take money from the sewer fund into this fund to help support those CSO capital efforts.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Leonard in these regards? Mr. Rusty?
Motion to suspend and call.
With no questions, we have a motion to suspend and call Mr. Rusty. Second, Mr. Engel?
Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
And Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
Motion adopted.
Motion to adopt, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hancock.
Mr. Waxler?
Yes.
Mrs. Crutch?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Corbett?
Yes.
Mr. Hancock?
Yes.
And Mr. Rusty?
Yes.
And this ordinance is also adopted. With the items of legislation addressed for this evening, did any members of council? Yes, Mr. Rusty.
I do have a comment.
Sure.
This, Mayor McCann, months ago, you had some good comments in regards to the cat population in our community. And Facebook shows a lot of maybe explosion of small kittens that are being born daily, if not whatever, found downtown or whatever. And I guess not today, but maybe in the near future, if you have any more insight on what the city can do in partnerships with other agencies or whatever to maybe address what we can do with cats, the cat population, if it does grow in neighborhoods and so on and so forth. And the other part is somebody wants to control the cat in regards to reproduction, and if those things are still available to us. But if you can, I'd really appreciate that.
Okay, I'll see what we can do for you, Mr. Rusty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did any members of council have emails or messages as far as citizens' concerns? If not, and with no citizens to state concerns, we have a motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Engel.
Second.
Second, Mr. Corbett. All those in favor of adjourning for this evening, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we are adjourned for this evening.
Todd?